The letter came on a cold Thursday morning. It was slipped between the usual mail I get every day: bills, ads, and a postcard from my sister in Ohio. But this letter was different. It was thick and cream-colored with gold letters raised on the front. It was an invitation to my son's wedding. I held it carefully in my hands. The names on the front made my heart both ache and hope. Michael Carter and his fiancée, Julia Bennett. Two names I had said many times in my mind but rarely out loud. I looked at the invitation and then at the note inside. The note was written in neat handwriting, but it was not from Michael or Julia. It was from Julia's mother, a woman named Elaine Bennett. I had met her only a few times, but she carried a coldness that I could never forget. The note said I was welcome to come, but only quietly. I was to sit away from the others, out of the way. I was asked to understand and respect their wishes. It felt like a gentle way of saying I was not wanted. I sat down slowly in my old armchair, the letter still in my hand. My scarf was wrapped tightly around my head. It was a shield to cover the pale skin, the marks left by the treatments I was taking. I tried to imagine how they must see me, a tired old woman, weak and sick, someone better left forgotten, but I smiled anyway. It was not an easy smile. It was a tired smile, the kind I gave to myself in the mirror every morning, a smile that said I was still here, still fighting, still their mother. For a moment I thought maybe this day would be different. Maybe Michael would remember the nights I stayed up late when he was a boy, listening to his dreams and fears. Maybe Julia would see the love I had poured into raising my son. Maybe this wedding could be a new start for us all. But deep inside I knew better. I knew this was not about love or family. It was about appearances, about keeping things perfect for the photos, about hiding anything that might upset the image they wanted to show the world. Later that evening, Michael called me. His voice was polite but distant. "Mom," he said, "I want you to be there. But please understand, we want you to sit quietly, not to draw attention." I told him I understood perfectly. It was a kind way to say he did not want me seen. It was a way to keep me away without saying the cruel words I had already heard. What they did not know was that I was holding on to more than memories. I was holding a secret worth more than they could guess. Something I had built quietly over the years. A secret I was ready to use in my own way. When the time came, that night I sat alone in the dark. The house was quiet except for the soft hum of the heater. I wrapped myself in a blanket and stared out the window. I thought about all the years I had given to my son, the hard work, the sacrifices, the sleepless nights. I remembered the small duplex I had bought when Michael was only 5 years old. The house was run down, but it gave us a place to call home. I had fixed it up slowly, bit by bit, even when money was tight. Then I bought another house, and another. A small collection of rental homes that brought in a little extra income each month. I thought about the beauty salon I helped a friend open. I did not tell Michael about any of this. I kept it quiet. I wanted to surprise him one day. I wanted to show him that despite the hard life, I had built something that could help his future. Now with the wedding invitation in my hand, I knew it was time. Time to decide how to use what I had saved. Time to take control of my story. I stood up slowly and walked to the mirror. I adjusted my scarf and looked at my reflection. The woman looking back was tired but not broken. There was a fire in her eyes, a quiet strength. Tomorrow would be the day I showed up, not to ruin their perfect photos, not to beg for a place in their lives, but to show them who I really was. To remind them that I was not invisible, because no matter what they thought, I was still here. I was still their mother, and I had one last smile to give. The next afternoon Michael arrived without warning. I heard the door close softly behind him, then footsteps down the hall. My heart tightened. I stood in the living room clutching the armrest of my chair as if it could keep me steady. I had tried to prepare myself for this moment, but nothing could soften the blow. He walked in with the same confident air I had always known. He smelled like his favorite cologne, strong and fresh, but there was no warmth in his eyes. Not for me. He barely glanced at the cookies I had baked, or the tea I brewed, the loose leaves he once begged me to save from the market. It was as if I were already invisible. Michael sat down on the edge of the couch, tapping his fingers impatiently. I was already standing ready to speak when he said it. "I think it's better if you don't come to the wedding." His words hit me like a sharp wind. I tried to steady my breath, but I felt as though the floor had dropped beneath me. What do you mean? I asked quietly, though part of me already knew. He looked away, adjusting his collar. It's a very curated event. Julia and I agreed on a modern, clean look, minimalist. We want the guest list to reflect that. I frowned, confused. You don't want your mother in your wedding photos. He shifted uncomfortably. It's not just about photos. It's about presentation. You've been sick, the scarf, the coughing. It might make some guests uncomfortable. My heart cracked quietly. A small break but a deep one. So I would be a distraction. He sighed and said, Mom, we love you. But Julia wants a certain look, a certain experience. You know, for the photos, the setting, we want everything perfect. I looked down at the teacup I had barely touched. It felt heavier than usual. I wanted to speak, to fight, but the words stuck in my throat. Then, without knocking, Julia entered the room. She was tall and thin, her face sharp and cold like she belonged on a magazine cover. She didn't look at me. Instead, she glanced around the room as if smelling something unpleasant. So this is the place, she said flatly. Michael introduced me as his mother. Julia nodded without making eye contact. Nice to meet you. I stood there in my own home feeling like a guest. I tried to find the strength to say, I want to be there. I can sit in the back. I don't need attention. I just want to see my son get married. Julia finally looked at me, but her eyes were icy. We already finalized the seating chart in the dress code. I'm sure you understand, it's about the vibe. Michael added, you're sick, the scarf, pale skin. It's going to make people uncomfortable. Julia continued, maybe after the honeymoon we can talk about long-term care. Somewhere clean, peaceful, a good place for recovery. I felt like I had been punched in the chest. A nursing home, she meant a nursing home. They didn't see me as a mother, just a problem to hide. Michael tried to sound kind. I'm trying to be respectful. We can send photos. We'll FaceTime you during the ceremony. It will be like you were there. I shook my head. I don't want FaceTime. I want to be in the room. Julia smiled, but it was not a kind smile. We just want what's best. Michael stood up and kissed the top of my scarf. It felt like a cold farewell. We love you, Mom. We really do. And then they left. Just like that. No hugs, no tears, no promises. Just silence. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I sat back down slowly, hands trembling on my knees. The tea was still warm, untouched. The cookies still on the plate. I whispered to the empty room, thank you for showing me who you really are. The scarf around my neck was no longer a shield hiding shame. It held me together because something inside me had changed. I had a purpose now. I had something to finish, and Michael would learn what happens when a mother who gave everything has nothing left to lose. That night, I did not cry. I did not scream, or curse, or beg God for answers. I sat in silence, wrapped in the faded robe I had worn since Michael was in high school. My thin hands folded in my lap. The house felt darker, the shadows deeper, as if they were listening. My breathing was shallow and raspy from the treatments, but I did not care. I stared out the window at the streetlight blinking above the quiet road. I remembered the days when that light would shine on my front steps as Michael walked home from school. Backpack bouncing, hungry and full of stories. Now it was just me and the weight of the words they said. You will ruin the photos. You will make everyone uncomfortable. This is why your father left you. That last one hurt the most. I knew my husband left because he was a coward. Not because of me. Not because I was sick or tired. He did not want to be a father. He did not want to work 2 jobs or love a woman with battle scars from life. I never told Michael the truth about his father. I told him he was tired, not cruel, broken, not abandoned. I let Michael believe his father loved him once. It was the least I could do. But Michael had grown into a man like his father, handsome, successful, but cold and cruel. I looked at the empty chair in front of me, and whispered, I gave you everything. I loved you more than life. And you threw me away for a woman who never looked me in the eye. I was tired, but I was not broken. After they left, the house felt emptier than ever. The silence pressed down on me like a heavy blanket. I sank into my chair and closed my eyes, letting the memories wash over me. I thought about all the years I spent working hard for Michael. The long nights cleaning offices, the early mornings making breakfast, the weekends fixing things around the house. I never wanted him to worry about money or feel like he lacked anything. When Michael was small, I bought a rundown duplex across the street. It was barely standing, but I saw potential. I fixed it slowly, patching holes, painting walls, making it a home. That house was the start of something quiet but strong. I bought another house after that. And another. Each one added a little more money in my pocket. The rent paid for medicine and food, and sometimes little treats for Michael. I did not tell him about these houses. I did not want to burden him. I also helped a friend open a small beauty salon in town. It was my way of giving back, of building something lasting in the community. I had shares in that salon too, a steady income I counted on. All of it was mine, a quiet fortune I had built, penny by penny, a secret treasure hidden away from the world. Now I thought, it was time to decide what to do with it. I pulled open the old filing cabinet in my bedroom. It was tucked away in a corner, filled with papers from years past. Underneath tax returns and birth certificates. I found the folder I was looking for. Inside were my will and life insurance papers, the deeds to the rental homes, bank statements with numbers that surprised even me. I read each page slowly, letting it sink in. I had never lived fancy. I still clipped coupons and wore the same worn shoes to church. But I had money, enough to make a difference. I thought about how I wanted to use it now. Michael had shut me out. He had called me ugly. He had said I was a distraction. He had let Julia speak for both of them. I decided to rewrite my will. I would leave everything to a place that mattered to me. The Rose House Foundation, a shelter for elderly women who had been forgotten, abandoned by their families. Women like me. I remembered the days I volunteered there, painting walls, serving meals, sitting with those too tired to read. They were my sisters now. Women who deserved kindness, not silence. I wrote a new letter, not for Michael, but for the foundation. I gave instructions on how to use the money, how to keep the salon open, how to sell the homes, and give the proceeds away. Then I wrote a letter for Michael. I told him why he would not get a single thing. I told him about love and sacrifice, about being thrown away like trash when I only wanted to be seen. I felt lighter after, like a weight had lifted from my chest. The scarf I wore was no longer a mask of shame, but a symbol of strength. Tomorrow I would meet my lawyer, and sign the new papers. Tomorrow I would take back control. Not for Michael, not for Julia, but for me. The next afternoon, my old friend and lawyer, Marcia, came to my house. We had known each other since we were young women singing in the church choir. She had seen me through good times and hard times. She understood without needing many words. When she arrived, she carried her black briefcase and smiled warmly. "How are you holding up?" she asked softly. I told her I was ready to finish what I started, ready to rewrite my story. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one where I had pored over papers the night before. I slid the folder across to her. "This is what I want," I said, my voice steady. Marcia opened the folder carefully and began reading. My new will, the plan to leave everything to the Rose House Foundation. The houses, the salon shares, the bank accounts, everything except one small letter for Michael. She looked up at me. "You sure about this, Lauren? It's a big change." I nodded. He told me I was ugly, that I was a problem. I gave him my life, and this is how he treats me. "No, Marcia, it is time for someone else to have it. Someone who will use it for good." Marcia smiled gently. "I understand." I handed her a sealed envelope. "This is for Michael. It explains everything." She took it and placed it carefully in her briefcase. "When do you want this given to him?" I thought for a moment. "Not yet. Let him have his wedding day. Let him smile for the camera. After that, it's time." Marcia nodded. "I will follow your instructions exactly." I felt a calm settle over me. For the first time in a long time, I had control. After we finished the papers, I sat back in my chair. My hands were shaking, but my heart was quiet. Marcia packed up and prepared to leave. Before she walked out, she turned and said, "Lauren, you are stronger than you think." I smiled, feeling a warmth I had not known in months. "Thank you, Marcia, for everything." When the door closed behind her, I was alone again. But this time I did not feel lonely. I looked around my small home. The worn furniture, the faded curtains, the photos of Michael as a boy. This house held my memories, my love, my sacrifice. I knew the road ahead would not be easy. There would be whispers, anger, maybe even regret. But I was ready. I took off my scarf for a moment and touched my hair, thin and fragile, but still mine. I took a deep breath and whispered to myself, "This is my story now." Tomorrow I would sign the new will. Tomorrow I would take the first step toward peace. And no matter what happened next, I knew I had done all I could. The morning of the wedding arrived quietly. I woke early, before the sun had a chance to rise. The house was still dark and peaceful. The only sound the soft ticking of the old clock on the wall. I moved slowly, careful not to disturb the calm. I took a long warm bath, letting the water wash away the weight that had settled on my shoulders. The aches from the treatment still lingered, but today I pushed them aside. I dressed carefully in a soft gray suit I had saved for special occasions. It was simple but elegant, and I wrapped a deep blue scarf around my head, the one lined with silver thread. I pinned on a small brooch my own mother had given me many years ago, a silver dove, worn but shining still. When I looked in the mirror, I saw a fragile woman. Yes, but also someone with quiet strength. Someone who had survived storms and still stood tall. Marcia arrived right on time. She wore a navy pantsuit and low heels, carrying her briefcase with a calm confidence that steadied me. She handed me a small black purse with a few essentials, a tissue, a bottle of water, and a second sealed envelope. "That one's for Julia," I said softly. "Give it to her after." Marcia looked at me closely. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" I nodded. "I want to see it. Just once. I want to see how far he thinks he's come." We rode in silence, the car humming softly as we drove toward the vineyard on the outskirts of town. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a warm golden light over the fields and trees. When we arrived, the place took my breath away. Rows of green vines stretched toward the horizon, white roses blooming along the walkways. Guests in pastel and champagne dresses moved beneath white tents and strings of lights. A small quartet played soft jazz near the entrance, their music gentle and inviting. I stayed in the car for a moment, drinking in the scene. Michael had spared no expense. The wedding was beautiful, perfect for a magazine cover, just as they wanted. Marcia helped me out of the car, steadying me as we walked to the seating area. I was to sit in the third row, quiet and unobtrusive, just as they had requested. A few guests glanced my way, offering polite nods, but no one recognized me. To them I was just another face in the crowd. I sat down, my hands resting on my lap, my breath slow and steady. From where I was, I could see the altar and the guests, the small platform where the vows would be exchanged. The ceremony began with the officiant's words about love and unity. Michael appeared, walking down the aisle, sharp and proud in his tuxedo. Julia followed, stunning in a long fitted gown that sparkled in the sunlight. The crowd sighed with admiration. I did not. My eyes stayed fixed on Michael. He did not look my way. The officiant spoke of family and support, but Michael's gaze remained forward, never turning. The vows were long and full of promise. Julia cried as she spoke. Michael smiled with charm and confidence. They exchanged rings, kissed gently, and turned to face the crowd. Applause filled the air, guests rising to their feet. I remained seated, still quiet, still unseen, when the couple made their way down the aisle, hand in hand posing for photos under the floral arch. I gave Marcia a small nod. Marcia stood, removed the envelope from her bag and walked directly toward them. Julia saw her coming and frowned. Michael's smile faltered when he recognized Marcia. "Congratulations," Marcia said evenly, handing the first envelope to Michael. Then she turned and gave the second envelope to Julia. Neither spoke. Confusion and shock flashed across their faces. Marcia returned to my side. "Done," she whispered. I stood slowly, gripping my cane for support. From across the field, I saw Michael open the envelope. His expression changed quickly. Confusion, Disbelief. Panic. He flipped through the papers. The new will. The letter. The proof of donation. Our eyes met for a moment. I did not wave. I did not smile. I turned away and walked back to the car. Let him smile for the camera, I thought. Let him have this day, because everything after it would belong to me. Michael stood frozen in front of the guests, the manila envelope trembling in his hands. Around him the celebration continued. People clapped, laughed, and toasted the newlyweds. The photographer adjusted his camera, preparing for more pictures. But Michael did not move. His face had gone pale beneath his warm skin, and the veins at his temple pulsed with tension. His lips parted slightly, as if the words on the pages had knocked the air from his lungs. Julia, standing close beside him, leaned over and whispered sharply, "What is it? Why is she here again? What's in that envelope?" Without waiting for an answer, she grabbed the second envelope from Marcia and tore it open. Inside was a single handwritten note on ivory paper, penned in my own handwriting. It read, "Julia, I will not make this about insults. I will not relive the moment. You looked me in the eye and threatened to send me away like yesterday's trash. But I will tell you this. If you married Michael for what you think you're getting, I suggest you find a new dress and a new life. He has nothing now. He earned it." Julia's jaw dropped, and she stared at the letter as if it burned her. "What does this mean?" she demanded. Michael did not answer. He flipped through the legal documents Marcia had included, pages of neatly formatted text, all signed and stamped. The will was clear. Every asset I owned, my homes, my bank accounts, my shares in the salon, had been left to the Rose House Foundation. Nothing for him, not a dime. No trust fund, no home, not even the pearls he gave me as a child. The last page was a personal letter addressed to Michael. "Michael, you were born from love and raised with sacrifice. I scrubbed floors and worked hard, so you could have a future. I wore old shoes and said no to things I needed, so you could say yes to everything you wanted. When I got sick, I still wanted to leave you everything, even though you never came with me to treatment. I wanted you to have the fruits of my labor. But then you told me I was too ugly to be seen at your wedding. That is when I realized I did not fail as a mother. You failed as a son. Now I leave you nothing but your name. I hope you build something with it." He read it once, then again. Each time his hands shook harder. The smile he had worn so carefully cracked in two. A murmur spread through the guests. The pianist stopped playing. Someone whispered, "What's going on?" Julia turned to Michael, panic growing in her voice. "Is this real? Tell me this isn't real." Michael looked at her, face ashen. "She left me nothing." Julia stared at him like he had just told her they were bankrupt. Her mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. "You gave it all away," he snapped. "You told me she was dying. You said she was dying." Julia hissed. "So what were you waiting for? The hug. You let her take everything because you couldn't fake respect for 3 hours." Michael said nothing. Julia's eyes darted across the venue. Too many people were watching now. Phones were out, whispers turning to pointed fingers. "I'm not marrying a broke man who can't even control his own mother," she spat. Her words hit him harder than any slap. He tried to grab her hand. "Julia, please. This doesn't change us." She yanked her hand away. "You embarrassed me. You let her humiliate me. I didn't even know she was sitting right there." Julia snapped, pointing toward the third row. "You let her come to the wedding." The guests fell silent. The reception tent was still. Michael turned slowly toward the empty seat where I had been. I was gone. All that remained was a folded scarf on the chair, blue with silver threads, gently placed, deliberately left. Julia turned on her heel and stormed off, leaving her bouquet forgotten on the grass. Her bridesmaids followed, their heels clicking sharply on the pavement. Michael stood alone beneath the floral arch, where they had just exchanged vows. The photographer quietly lowered his camera. One guest, a distant cousin who had known me years ago, stepped forward and placed a hand on Michael's shoulder. "Son," the man said softly, "that woman walked through hell to raise you. You should have let her sit in the front row. Michael could not speak. He just stood there, the envelope in one hand, and his wedding unraveling in the other. Marcia watched from a distance, her face calm but sad. I had already driven home. I sat by my window, sipping tea and watching the streetlight flicker on across the road. I did not need to see the chaos to know it had happened. I whispered to myself, this is for every mother who was told she was not enough. This time, the tears that slipped down my cheeks were not from sadness. They were from peace. I left town quietly 2 days after the wedding. No goodbyes. No suitcase full of regrets. Just a small leather handbag, my passport, and a single letter left on Marcia's kitchen counter. It read simply, it's done. I now live in a coastal village in southern Spain. The air smells like oranges and sea salt. My neighbors don't know my name. I told them to call me Anna. I rented a small home with blue shutters and an old courtyard where I grow mint and basil. I sit in the afternoons with tea and a wool blanket across my knees. The aches from the treatments still come, but the peace I found here is stronger than the pain. Every morning I buy fresh bread at the market. The lady at the flower stall knows I like white lilies. I smile at the neighbors when I pass by, but I keep to myself mostly. I tell people I had a husband once, but I do not speak of the past. Sometimes I think about the scarf I left behind at the wedding. The blue one with silver threading, folded neatly on the chair. I hope someone picked it up. I hope someone wondered why it was placed so gently. Let them wonder. Let them write poems about the woman who vanished. Let them teach my name in fundraising halls and foundation grants. Because the truth is, I'm not resting in peace. I'm living in it. Michael, he gets to live in silence. That is the only inheritance I left him. I watch the sunset from my small courtyard and feel the weight lift from my chest. This life is quiet, but it is mine. I have found a new beginning. I volunteer at a nearby shelter for elderly women, the same kind I left my fortune to. I paint walls, serve meals, and read the Bible with those too tired to read alone. They are my sisters now. Women no one visits. Women no one remembers. They do not care what I look like. They do not treat me like I am invisible. I listen to their stories, and I share mine only when it feels right. The internet still buzzes with whispers of my story. Marcia tells me the Rose House Foundation renamed their main building Massey Hall. Donations pour in after my story went viral. Women write tributes, sharing their own pain and strength. They thought I was gone, and for a time I let them believe it. Because for Michael, losing me was the best thing that ever happened. It was the only thing that ever taught him anything. He tried to sue, tried to make Marcia unseal the will, but it was airtight. Not a crack for daylight anywhere. He never got to say sorry, never got closure, and I am not sorry for that. I gave him a quiet stage to be cruel on. I sat still and let him show his true heart to the world. And when he did, the world saw it for what it was, empty and ungrateful. Me, I did not die angry. I lived with purpose. I sip tea now, while the sun paints the stones gold. I walk to the market on Tuesdays. I buy fresh bread in the mornings. I have enough. And that is all I need. Years have passed since I left that wedding behind. Since I left my old life and started fresh as Anna, in a quiet coastal village. The salty air, and the soft sound of the waves, have become my new normal. I wake each day with a peaceful heart, knowing I chose my own path. Sometimes I think about Michael, the son who called me ugly, who pushed me away when I needed him most. I wonder if he ever thinks about me, if he feels the weight of what was lost. But I do not carry anger for him anymore. I have no space for bitterness. I have learned that sometimes the hardest battles are not won with words, but with quiet strength. Here in my small garden, I watch the flowers grow. I tend to my herbs and sit in the sunlight, wrapped in my soft shawl. Life feels simple, but it is full. I volunteer still at the shelter. I have made friends there. Women with stories like mine. Stories of pain, love, loss, and hope. We lift each other up. We remind each other that we are seen, that we matter. I do not miss the grand things I left behind. The fancy clothes, the big house, the celebrations that never felt like home. What I have now is enough. Peace, freedom, a chance to live without fear or shame. I keep the letters I wrote to Michael in a small box. Sometimes I open them and read, not to hurt, but to remember the love that never died, the hope I once held for him, the mother I was, and still am. I have no regrets. I did everything I could, and I learned that sometimes loving means letting go. I hope one day, Michael finds his own peace. I hope he understands what I could not say aloud. That love is more than appearances or perfect pictures. That family is not just blood, but respect and kindness. For now I choose to live in the light, to cherish the simple moments, to be the woman who survived and thrived. I am more than the scars, the sickness, the silence. I am alive, and that is my greatest victory.